Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. For 5 years, you have listened to me speak about volunteering on the peninsula at different events, whether it's bicycling, auto racing, golf. I thank each and every one of you for standing up and agreeing to be interns to take over the eventual committees at the AT&T National in the future, whether it's marshals or caddy, player hospitality, transportation. Each of you over the next 2 years will learn to take over these committees and eventually graduate to running this for the event. So thank you very much. What we'll spend today doing is covering an overview of what exactly it is to run a PGA Tour event, how it works, and some of the useful references and materials that you can use to work with your committees and your staff as you prepare for an event of this magnitude. This year's AT&T National Pro-Am, as most of you know, should know at this point, is being held in, anybody remember? Should know, you're going to be the interns at the tournament.
Pebble Beach.
At Pebble Beach.
Spyglass.
In 1 month. At Spyglass and at Monterey Peninsula Country Club. So background and issues. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about the AT&T National, kind of a little bit of history, we won't go into it a lot. We'll talk about organizing and running an ad hoc group, because that's what you're going to be doing. You'll be running a group of volunteers who come in for a very short period of time, and then do their job, and then they'll leave. We're going to talk about Raccoon. Some of you remember what Raccoon is from my earlier conversations over the last few years. The rest of you will learn very much what this acronym means. We'll talk about some additional information for the tournament and reference sources that we'll be using in the future over the next 4 weeks as we prepare for the tournament. And we'll kind of conclude and answer any questions you have. Background, what is golf? I know it's a simplistic question, and everybody here would think, all my volunteers know what golf is. You're actually wrong. In a lot of cases, the volunteers that will work for you may not care about golf. They may be working for a service organization, and their job is just to help raise funds for their group. So they know nothing about golf. They don't know that there are 18 holes. They don't know the difference between a golf club and a tee. They don't know about concessions. They don't know how a golf course is even laid out. They may not even know that there are 18 holes. The only thing they may know is that Tiger Woods is the top player in the world, at least visibility-wise, if not ranking. But what is golf? Golf, ultimately, to quote Wikipedia, is a precision club and ball sport in which competing players, golfers, use many types of clubs and techniques to hit balls into a series of holes on a golf course in the fewest number of strokes. What does that really mean for any of us? Not much. They get to play and we get to work and make sure that the spectators are happy. The PGA. Right now the PGA is the primary source. There are actually 3 sub-tours within the PGA, Professional Golf Association. The first one is the PGA itself. It's the one that most people have probably heard of before. That's the one where the top stars, the young stars under age 50 play in. It's also the one that the amateurs come up through. You also have the Champions Tour. It used to be called the Senior Tour. As for anybody who graduates, they're over 50, still probably in their prime, a lot of them, but they've reached that age category, they can play on the Champions Tour. It's a whole separate tour. So there's 36 tour events in the PGA. There are another 34 events on the Champions Tour. So if you're a champion at that age category, you could actually play in, well, you couldn't play in all of them because there's only 52 weeks in a year. But you have that. And then the final one is the Nationwide Tour. The Nationwide Tour is for amateurs. And those are the ones who are working their way up. They've gone through qualifications, but they aren't quite good enough to make it into the PGA yet. The big thing we want to talk about, though, is hosting a tournament. Right now, the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, who is who I work with and who you all work for during this week, during this next month, they are the ones who host the tournament. They rent out the facilities, Pebble Beach, Spyglass Hills, Monterey Peninsula Country Club. They then bring in 154 amateur and professional golfers who then play on the course. It is a full tournament. It is the largest tournament in the PGA in the entire year. It also happens to be the second week of the regular PGA Tour season. So it's very early in the year, it's very big, and it's one of the bigger events as you prepare and get ready to lead into the Masters, which is the first major tournament that will be held in April. As you're hosting a tournament, you can't just have the golfers show up, because you've got to have, in this case with Tiger Woods, we'll talk about that in a minute, you'll have 35 to 50,000 people showing up to watch. So you have to have water, you have to have concessions, you have to have the marshals. So the ones of you who are running the marshals, you're the ones who dress up here in your 1920s gear with your little Argyle socks, and you basically keep all the spectators quiet. you have water distribution, and what we're going to talk about today is an example of what a typical committee is set up to. You have environmental services, which handles all trash, recycling, and water distribution on the course. You also have player hospitality and caddy hospitality. Who's going to make sure the players get taken care of, who's going to make sure the caddies, because the caddies have an ego just as big as the players. Behind the scenes, that is what you are. You're behind the scenes, but you're very visible. Every one of your 2,000 volunteers will be out here on the tournament, and everything you see and do reflects not only on you as a committee chief, eventually, but also on the tournament, on the Monterey Peninsula Foundation, and in a strange sort of way, ultimately, on Clint Eastwood, because Clint Eastwood is the president of the Monterey Peninsula Foundation. So if you want to piss off the guy with 357, piss off Clint Eastwood. Just keep that in mind. He is a nice guy. He'll be out there and playing. A lot of times what he does do is when he plays on Thursday, on his first hole, he usually just grabs a spectator from the stands. He says, "Who wants to be my caddy?" And he'll just grab a spectator and they get to be the caddy for the first 4 or 5 holes. So he is a nice guy. He really is kind of a recluse at the event, but he is out there. And the point of reference is that everything you do is visible. The history began in 1937. It's one of the oldest tournaments in the country. In 1986 is when AT&T became the sponsor. And they've run it now for 15 years. It's the 16th year that AT&T has actually run the tournament. So that's a big deal. It's a long-running tournament. It used to be called the Crosby Clam Bake. For those who've been around the peninsula for a long time, it was the event. Just like living here, the Hotel de Monte was the tourist event. Coming to the Crosby Clam Bake and getting invited in the 1950s, that was the epitome if you were in Hollywood, to come up here and invited to play in this very small tournament then. The scope of the tournament, I won't go through all the details. That's just the bigger statistics of some of the event issues. But now, what does that mean for you coming up as interns and eventually taking over committees? It means that you're running an ad hoc group. And what is an ad hoc group? It's a group of individuals from different backgrounds who come together to meet a specific need for a short period of time, and then usually will disband and go back to their normal groups eventually when they're done. That's what you're doing. So if you're the Environmental Services Committee, for example, what will happen here is we have 2 groups on the peninsula, La Mesa Elementary School, which is one of the local elementary schools, and a company called the Offset Project, who does environmental education. Between the 2 of them, they have over 300 volunteers who will work this week. And their job is to basically come together, run these 3 courses, and make sure that nobody raises an issue about trash or recycling on the course. More specifically, for the players and caddies, that there's always water on the holes, so when the caddies or the players want to have a drink, they actually have something on the course, and it's not vodka. Unless you're Bill Murray. So the big thing about a committee and knowing how to run an ad hoc group is you got to know your responsibilities. And that's what we're really going to spend the last 6-7 minutes today talking about before we break down into groups over the next week. And what it comes down to is a term I call raccoon. Now my background is coming up from environmental services, so I know it really well. If you think of what a raccoon is, what is a raccoon? It's a cute, cuddly creature that you almost want as a pet.
Oh, God.
But they scavenge. They're not well liked. Nobody really wants them around. However, it is synonymous with what environmental services does. Nobody wants them there because they pick up the trash. But everybody has to have them there because they pick up the trash. Raccoons, because they get to know everybody, they're very good scavengers. The environmental services crews, they get to know all the volunteer groups, so they get to meet all of you and they'll eat. And what will end up happening is they take care of you, and what you'll end up finding is, because they take care of you so well, you end up taking care of them. So when you have extra food, a lot of times you end up providing it to these guys. It's a very symbiotic relationship. So over time, they've organized and they've developed a name, and they call themselves Raccoons. But I've really thought about that and determined it and developed it into a policy. And really the first one is really how to run your committee. The first one, research the requirements. Know what it is your job is going to be. What are you going to be doing? If you're a marshal, then it's really simple. Your job is to keep all the spectators quiet so that the golfers can concentrate on hitting their golf ball directly where they want to hit it. If you're caddy hospitality, then you've got to go through and manage it that. You've got to make sure the caddies are happy. The next one is accepting the mission. You've already done that. You're doing your job. The next one is conceptualizing the plan. The big thing with conceptualizing the plan is understanding what it is you're going to be doing. How are you going to do it? It's mission plan. What are the steps from A to Z that you have to do now and over the next 3 weeks to prepare for executing this course? Because you don't want to be planning on the 3rd of February about what you're going to do. You need to know what everything is going to happen and when it's going to happen. You got to conceptualize the plan. Construct the workflow. You need to know exactly how you're going to be doing things and when. It goes with conceptualizing the plan. Once you build the workflow and you know when you're going to do things and how you're going to do it, it becomes very easy to organize your staff because you know who needs to be when and where. You know that I need X many volunteers at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need to do a shift change, or I need to have transportation to get them out to the long set of the holes. I know that the players are going off of the first tee or the 10th tee at a certain time, and I need to have certain holes set up at this time where other holes may not see anybody for another 2 hours. So I don't need to put anybody on 18 at 7 o'clock in the morning because nobody's finishing their day at 7 o'clock in the morning. So organizing your staff. The next one is opening day. Opening day is not Thursday of tournament week. It is Monday of practice rounds because that's the first day that spectators are allowed in, and opening day is the day that you can work out the kinks for 2 days. Make sure all your staff is working. Now some of you have staff that will not come in until Thursday, so that does become your opening day. That just means that you as a staff leader, you need to make sure you have everything organized ahead of time and that you have all the details worked out because you have no slack time in what you're going to be doing. There is no time to make up if you're missing something or you have something out of place because the tournament's begun. And lastly, never forget the details. You need to understand exactly where the details are and what you're going to be doing. Because the thing that will catch you the most is when you get a phone call that says, why didn't you do this? Or Ollie Nutt, who's the co-president of the foundation, calls and says, why is there trash on the first tee box when he comes to tee up with Clint Eastwood? I know this for a fact because that's when it's happened. The attention to detail is the most important part of your job. If you plan your workflow, if you organize your staff correctly, the details will start to work themselves out. In the case of this is a really simple one. Ollie Nutt was playing on Spyglass 3 years ago. He was on the first tee. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I actually happened to be standing about 300 feet away. And I get a call on the radio from tournament headquarters. Glenn, there's trash in the trash can on the first tee at Pebble Beach. Who's calling? Ollie Nutt's calling it in. Really, I'm like looking at Ollie Nutt. He's on a different course. There's trash, okay. I immediately get on the phone, you have to call over, you have to react, you have to know who to call, you have to know where the right people are, because it doesn't really matter if it's Ollie Nutt calling it in. More specifically, is there trash on the first tee? So the important thing was that I had somebody who I could get on the radio and immediately within 3 or 4 minutes have somebody on the first tee of Pebble Beach check and see if there was trash there. Turns out the course captain for there was on the first tee of Pebble Beach because she was in the right position, because she knew that was the critical point to be first thing in the morning on that course. She looked over and realized, no, there's nothing here. And what we realized was that ultimately, Ollie Nutt had no idea where he was. He was just playing on the wrong course. Now, it was the right course by pairings, but he just, in all the details, he forgot actually where he was actually playing golf that day. I mention that because ultimately, again, everything with this comes down to Raccoon. If you follow these requirements, you will have a successful plan and your committee will run right. And on Sunday, you'll walk away and you'll be relaxed. You won't be stressed out and you'll be ready to regroup and plan for first tee, which is in July, for the ones who are coming back and running the committees there. Do I have any questions from anybody? You're all excited, I can tell. I need to make sure I get all of your names and numbers so I have the call list before we leave here today. Last thing I wanted to cover is the website. Right now we've set up a website on Facebook. I'll send that out to everybody. It's Environmental Services 2012 AT&T. This is mine. Eventually there'll be one for every one of the committees. If you go out there and you look at that, you'll find all the reference documents, and we're going to start loading those on there for all the people that work for you. That will be up in the next 2 weeks, and if you have any questions during that time period, feel free to give me a call. I can be located off of there, and you all have my name and number anyway. Conclusion. Ultimately, PGA hosting a tournament requires dedicated volunteers. It's a massive effort, and most importantly though, it's rewarding and fun.